riding motocross, Glover style. Featuring six-time national champion Brock Glover. Southern California's Brock Glover enjoys a luxurious lifestyle as one of the world's premier motocross superstars. At the age of 16, Brock began his professional career with Team Yamaha. The following year, he captured his first 125 national title and continues on with his winning ways. His dream house sits atop a hill overlooking San Diego and is surrounded by the many trails he learned to ride on. Brock's burning desire to become number one is the key to his success. And that key has opened the door to some serious fun. Whether on land, water, or sometimes in the air, Brock enjoys the sensation of speed. Now let's go on inside and talk motocross with Brock Glover. A beautiful house here, and looking around, I see two trophies that are simply incredible. The first one is the USGP. Is that your most valuable?
It's one of the ones I probably only have on display around my house. You know, it was a nice win for me, and I think the wide world of sports coverage always helps the sport, and it helped me a lot, and you know, it brought my name into a lot of households.
Let's go back to the beginning. Where you're at right now in your career and your whole life, looking back, is this what you wanted, and have you reached all your goals yet?
Well, I always make new goals for myself. You've got to, and anytime you do that in any sport, you must set new goals out and try to accomplish those. But you know, I have accomplished a lot in motocross, and I'm pretty happy with the success that I've had. And you know, looking back on it all, you know, from the time it began, you know, I wasn't really sure I'd ever make it this far, but I'm real happy that I did.
How did you get involved in, obviously, El Cajon, beautiful, lots of open land, and a place to get out and enjoy the outdoors, and motorcycling is definitely very exciting. Did parents or friends, who got you first on a motorcycle?
Well, originally it was a family situation for myself that I, you know, went out. We used to trail ride out in the deserts just a little east of San Diego where I live, and you know, that was a recreational thing. And then my brother started racing. I got to see him race, and once he started racing, I got very interested in it. And he pretty much stopped racing by the time I, you know, began my racing career. But at that point, I raced very seriously for a couple of years, and my, you know, at that point, my dad started helping me at the end of my racing. Before that, another man had helped me that just happened to have a bike and decided to let me race it. So that was a real fortunate opportunity for me. And my dad helped me out, and we went racing every single weekend, and we went wherever the competition was. If it was Los Angeles or sometimes up farther north than that, we went to Arizona a few times, and we went anywhere there was a big race, and we looked for the competition, and I think that helped me out a lot. And after that, I picked up a ride from a support program, or a performance shop basically, and they sent me on the national circuit. And when I did, at that time I didn't get to ride all of them because I was only 15 and a half at the first race, and by the time I got 16 and got my professional AMA license, I had 5 or 6 nationals to compete on, and at that point I did very well, and even won a moto, and I finished 5th in the nationals that year. So right there, that landed me a lot of attention from the factories, and Yamaha was the one that offered me the best deal, and I thought had the best future, and I'm still with them 10 years later.
A small percentage of actual racing for you is like 5%. The rest is training, and it can apply to everybody else. I mean, 6 days out of the week you're training, or you're thinking about training. Can you tell us some tips that you would give to other people that have worked for you over the years? It's great for motocross.
Well, definitely training is a very, very important part of it, but I don't think that you need to attack the training part until you get up to a little higher level. At a young age, if you're just a junior rider, intermediate rider, or even a mini rider, I think the most important thing by far is to spend time on your motorcycle. Now, you can vary that sort of training a lot too. You can try, riding your motorcycle. You can trail ride, you can play ride, and there's other time that you actually should be doing motos, actual, 30-minute motos or 20-minute motos. Even, ride longer than you do race to set up that endurance. And But it isn't a bad idea if you are young and you don't, you feel you have some extra energy and you have some time. It's not a bad thing at all to get on a bicycle or to get, do a little jogging, that kind of stuff. But, I personally do a lot of cycling, and I think that's helped my sport, or me for my sport a lot. I think it's helped my legs and it's helped my endurance without damaging knees and ankles and lower backs and those kind of things. So I've done a lot of cycling and some swimming, and I have a gym here in my house, and it's easy for me to work out with my weights maybe twice a week during the off season, but during the season maybe once a week is all I do my weights.
Brock, no matter what stage you're at riding your motorcycle, whether it's a career or it's a sport, the bottom line is getting on that bike.
That's right, Dave. Practice, and that's what this video is all about. So let's go out and I'll show you a few moves, what I know.
Brock, secret spot, San Diego. This place is beautiful, and only you and a couple other guys can ride here. It's a special track just made for you.
Yeah, David, myself and Ricky Johnson, we came up and designed the Supercross track here, and had it built because we needed a place to practice our Supercross, and those places don't just pop up by nature. So we made this place, and it's kind of nice. But this isn't the only place I practice at, and you'll see some other footage and stuff today in the video at another track. And if I'm going to ride a sand track, for instance, I'll ride a sandy course. And if I'm going to ride a course that might be hilly, it's like Carlsbad, I'll ride a different kind of practice track. And I know where some of those different places are around here, and I just ride wherever I think I'm going to have to race next. The one thing you always got to remember is to wear your safety gear. It's very important. It doesn't matter if you're 100 yards out from your house testing your motorcycle or you're out on a serious practice session. I always wear my boots, my leathers at all times. Helmet is very, very important. Do not ride your motorcycle without your helmet, your gloves, and eye protection. Don't forget your goggles. It's really important, like I said, because you could get very seriously injured. It doesn't make any difference if you're just out practicing or you're out on a little trail ride. So make sure you wear your safety gear.
Brock, it looks like you're ready to ride. You ready?
Well, I got to do one more thing, Dave. It's really important, too. I think it's to check your bike before you ride. You got to make sure all the spokes are tight, chains tight, everything's, ready to rip out there, because you don't want to have something disastrous happen while you're out there practicing, because you could just, like I said earlier, you get hurt just as easy out here practicing as you could on a race. So it's very important to maintain your practice bike, and, I don't have my mechanic here, so I have to do it. So let me show you a few tips that I know that's helped my practice bikes last a lot longer.
All right.
One thing, David, I always bring my tools with me. I bring a little tray right here. I don't want to lug my whole toolbox around, so I'll just bring a little tray with me with some of my favorite tools in it, necessary to work on my bike. Like right here, I have my two favorite tools right here. This is my small hammer, getting in most situations. If that one doesn't work, I get my big one. No, seriously, yeah, I use these to adjust the shock preload. But it's really necessary, like I said, to check everything on your bike. It's very important to check your spokes, make sure they're always tight. You don't want to have a wheel, you ruin a wheel if your spokes, a few spokes are loose. So it's really important to do that. Check your chain. Like this one right here is just a little bit loose, but every bike's different, so you should check your manual to see where they recommend that your chain adjustment is. Like I said, I do both spokes. I check, gasoline. You always bring some gas with you. Handlebars, check the bolts on the handlebar, make sure they're tight. But a lot of times I keep track from the last time I rode my bike. If it starts feeling a little funny, I know if something needs to be adjusted usually. It's really important to keep your air filter clean. Air filter, especially in the summertime. In Southern California, sometimes I have to change mine every single time I ride. Other times I can go 3 or 4 practice sessions without ever even having to worry, depending on the dust condition in your area. But make sure you keep your filter done properly. Other areas that you want to look for, look at the frame, look at other parts of the bike, make sure there's no cracking, anything, depending on how old your bike is. Pipe mounts, motor mounts, these bolts are always really important to keep tight. Don't over tighten them, but make sure they are tight. Sprocket bolts, other things like that. General maintenance on your bike will help it definitely last a lot longer, and you'll be a lot more pleased with the performance of it if you do that.
Okay, Brock, your bike's ready to go. You've got most of your safety gear on. It's time to show us a little technique.
Yeah, I think that's good, Dave. Might as well start right at the beginning, too, on some starts. And we'll work on some practice starts, and I'll show you how I think the best way to get a hole shot is. Most everybody who races motocross knows the start is very critical. It's probably the most commonly overlooked when you're out practicing, too. So make sure when you're out practicing, do some practice starts. You don't necessarily need a full starting gate at your local racetrack. I do it many times on a fire road or any wide spot in my track. I like to take a friend along. He can simulate the reaction time of a gate. He can move his hand or drop a stick or do anything that helps you get out of the gate faster. Today I brought a friend of mine along, Jeff Grafton. Jeff's a neighbor of mine, been racing just over a year and is already at the top of the intermediate class. All right, Jeff, get in your normal starting position. Okay, at that point right there, you see Jeff, he slid up forward on the bike. That's a very good spot. He's leaning forward, arms bent, elbows up a little bit, kind of loading the front end. He already is reaching for the front brake. This is a technique that I've helped him with, and I use it many, many times. I load the front wheel with the brake, and that way I never creep into a starting gate. And in my racing, we use backwards falling ones, and that could be disastrous. Jeff's already on the clutch. He uses 2 fingers. Many people feel comfortable with a full handful. Some use 1 finger. It's just up to you, whatever you feel. But Jeff's in the position right now. He's ready. He's focused right ahead of him on the starting gate, getting ready for that reaction time. This is where I'd like to help Jeff at this point, and I'll show you a few of my maneuvers that I use. Once Jeff's positioning on the bike is correct, I want him to concentrate on a couple of things here when we do practice starts. One, I'm just going to have a stick, and I'm just going to give him a time and a signal, and he's going to have maybe 5-10 seconds. Anytime that I want to, I'm going to drop that stick. He's going to have to react to this stick just like a gate situation. On top of that, when he accelerates out of here, I want to make sure he keeps good and straight to get maximum amount of drive without losing any time and without having to let off the throttle and be able to get full traction to the ground. So Jeff, you ready to do a couple starts?
Yeah.
That was pretty good. And you also noticed with Jeff, he left the throttle at a steady position. This right here is so you never get caught with the throttle coming in the back position as the gate goes down. Take it up, run the bike up to a middle RPM range, and then hold it steady. And then when you react to the gate, then all you have to think about is your clutch. That's pretty good, Jeff. Right there, you got a little bit squirrely, but I don't think you're gonna have any trouble, and it is a little off camera right there. So we'll do a couple more starts here and see how you do, okay?
Okay.
Remember to work on this. Do 4, 5, 6 starts, and hopefully you will have a friend around to help you do something with a reaction time. If you don't, you should also work on technique just by yourself. It's very important to keep your bike very straight going out of the start. It makes a big difference and might make that extra bike length at the end of the straightaway, and you'll be in the first turn. That was a much better start. Jeff stayed very straight. But you also see right here, we're starting to get some ruts developing. And many times in a race course, those ruts are there from previous races. So remember, when you go up, look at the starting area you're going to pick. If you have a choice, pick a nice straight rut. That's going to make a big difference coming out of the start. It's going to keep you straight and you'll be able to keep the throttle on. If you get in one of those crooked ruts, you'll never get out of that gate first. Right there you saw 2 different starting techniques demonstrated by Jeff and myself. I personally put both feet on the ground. I feel more comfortable that way. Jeff, he likes to have 1 foot on the right peg. Other people I've actually seen have 1 foot on the left peg because they like to be near their shifter. Then again, I don't really shift until I'm quite a bit out of the gate because I start in 2nd gear on my 250, and some bikes even are capable of 3rd gear starts, but most of those are the open bikes. Jeff had to pull a 1st gear start here today, but he's on a YZ80 and the traction's real good. So just play around in your local starting area or whatever your track is, and then find out if you can pull a 1st or a 2nd gear start, where your body position has to be. Forward if the traction's good, maybe a little back if you're riding in some sand or some loose dirt. It makes a big difference, but both of our goals accomplished by the same thing: get in the first turn first and be straight out of the gate.
Okay, Brock, we've seen the start now. Whether you get a good start or a bad start, it's the first turn that's really important also. And we don't have 20 other riders here that you can go smoke them in the first turn and try to get the whole shot. What are we going to do?
Well, I want to show you some footage right here. Here I'm on the furthest most inside rider, number 1 in the white. I get a jump out of the gate that's not so great, and then my bike hops over the gate. I get a terrible drive, and most of the riders are already ahead of me. Here you can see me still on the right hand side of the screen, but actually way back from most of the lead riders. So right here I'm thinking to stay to the inside, keep away from all the riders, and hope some sort of opening might come up in the turn. I just stay in there and look for anything that's coming up, avoiding all crashes or any bumping that might be occurring on the outside. Here I'm still back, barely on the top of your screen in the right hand corner behind Ricky Johnson, who's in the yellow. Here I see a little opening up, so I get back on the gas as hard as I can, coming out of the turn even with about the middle of the pack. I can see still I have the inside. It's still a clear lane up ahead, so I accelerate up. You'll see me come back into the screen here in the white on the inside. And I'm back up inside behind Ricky. And Ricky's landing on the ground, and I'm coming in right behind him. And as soon as anything opens up, I squirt to the inside, passing any more riders and avoiding this crash that caught David Bailey here by surprise. So when you're doing starts, remember, even if you don't get the whole shot, to try to stay inside and look for any openings, and it should help you out a lot. We've seen the first turns now, so now that we're talking about cornering, let me show you a few of my techniques that should help you get around the turns much faster. That was okay, Jeff. Your approach looked pretty good, but what it seemed like to me is that you're sitting a little bit too far back on the bike, and that sometimes unloads your front end and it'll climb the berm. What you need to do, that's just what this pad's for, and all the bikes have it now. Get way up in there, and you'll want to get your leg out a little bit straight, okay? And get it out in here, just like in that. So when you're up there, remember just to climb forward. What that'll do, it'll load the front end for you, and then you'll be up on the bars in the proper position, and you'll be able to drive through the turn. So why don't you try it a couple more times. It might feel awkward at first, but the more you practice it, you'll be right in there, okay? This time you see Jeff, he's got his weight up forward, he's entering the turn in the proper body position, he throws his leg out, and he accelerates through the turn. You're seeing the difference, just sliding forward just a small amount is made with Jeff's cornering. Now we'll show some footage that I've done, and we'll break it down into slow motion so you can see exactly what I'm doing the whole time. Now this turn right here, it shows me a little better sliding up on the tank. As I enter the turn, I'm up hard on the front of the gas tank. My arms are bent, my body position is correct, it's centered over the bike. Notice I'm still centered over the bike and arms are still bent even as I'm exiting the turn, and I'm back on the gas hard. Now this turn is a perfect example of how important body positioning is. If I was back on the seat right now when I hit these bumps, the back of the bike, you can see it bouncing up. It'd be bucking me all over the place. And since I'm centered on the bike, it keeps my body in a good position, and I'm still able to exit the turn fast. You put it all together, this is how it should look.
Brock, I can't believe it. You make it look so easy. These are whoop-de-doos, stutter bumps, the whoops. You know, you see them a lot on supercross tracks, some on outdoor tracks. These bumps, they just ruin your body, your suspension. Is it easier to go through fast and slow?
Well, you got to look at each bump differently, David. And like this situation right here, there's not a very long set of them, but they are sharp on the other sides. And I like to almost, on this particular way, I like to run through like almost a hopping style and just jump 2 or 3 at a time. And so everyone has a different technique through them, and each whoop-de-doo is different. So let me show you some of the ways that I go through different ones, okay?
Great.
Whoop-de-doos are getting more and more popular in America everywhere you go. First, you only saw them in stadium events and the professional ranks, but nowadays you see them everywhere. And at first they were so small it seemed like you could rip right through them. Nowadays you can barely ride through them, let alone race. So this is an area you gotta watch, and you gotta even try to practice if you can. I know nobody has a Supercross stadium track in their backyard, but it is something you can build with some shovels, some tractors, or a little bit of imagination, because I've done it before. There's a lot of time to be made up in these areas, but it definitely takes a lot of practice. Every track I go to, it seems like we have a different style of whoop-de-doos. This one right here was at the LA Coliseum, and he could never get a rhythm through them. But the most important thing is just being in body positioning and being in the correct spot at all times. You can see you definitely have to ride whoop-de-doos on the pegs, and it's more like riding a buck and bronco than anything else. The one thing I always want to do is make sure I enter the whoop-de-doo straight and as fast as possible. I use the first one as a jump and then catapult myself as deep into the whoop-de-doos as I can. Then at that point right there, make sure you're back on the bike and your body positioning is fairly square. Here I keep the throttle on pretty steady to make sure I keep my speed up, but you don't want to give it too much gas or back completely off to where you plow into one of the whoops. You're skimming across the top of them right here, but if you're in the correct body position, you can handle almost anything the bike's going to do. So remember, go out and find some hoops. If you can find them on your local practice track, that's great, but if you can't, go out and build some, because you're going to need to practice these things over and over if you plan on getting to the checkered flag first.
What do you think?
Well, you know, you looked okay through it, but you see this bump right here? This is the problem right here. You've got to carry your speed. And I think if you carry your speed and take that as a jump, you know, just forget about this valley and this whoop-de-doos. Don't even think about that. You'll just clear this little valley out in this area. You want to make sure you land at least up on top of that with your rear wheel. If you hit it with your rear wheel, it might throw your front end down. It's going to screw you up for any drive out of the whoop. But if you can just think yourself almost like a deer or a rabbit, just kind of hop over this thing, be real light, and when you hit, let your suspension compress, and as it does, you do maybe one hop and two hops. On a little 80 like this, you probably take 2 hops at it, but try to be flowing with these bumps. Don't fight them. So why don't you put your goggles back on and take another run through there, and remember, try to get over this first one. It's your first thing you're trying to accomplish. You know, take this as 2 steps at a time. We'll, you know, get over this first one, and then from there, you want to go out. Okay? You can see here where Jeff had some trouble going through the whoops, but I stopped him and told him to jump into the whoops a little bit harder. Just to treat the first one almost as a double jump so you can clear over the top of it. Then he's got so much speed he just skims over the top and exits right out like they're not even there. Again, you see it from another angle here. Jeff hits it, clears it just like a double jump. And when he hits, he's got enough speed so he just back on the throttle very lightly even. Carries right across the top of the whoops. And definitely looks a lot better around this time. Alright, Brock, next we have jumps. And jumps are, you know, to go over fast, you usually just jump them, but the exception on style. How about this first jump here? Yeah, this is an interesting jump. It's a basic single jump, but there's a better way to do it, I think. I'm coming out of a straightaway right here. I hit this jump. If I was just to land normal, I would land out there, then have to make a turn maybe 40 feet after the jump, and then accelerate down the straightaway. What I like to do is come through this and actually begin to set my bike up in the air. It looks very stylish. It's a stylish maneuver, but what it actually is doing is setting me up for the next turn, and I'm already set for the turn and accelerating out onto the next straightaway. And I think it saves a little bit of time. Again here, I'm not trying to do cross-ups. What I'm trying to do is get my bike set up in the air so when I land at the turn afterwards, I'm already heading down the straight and get easy to get back on the gas. By approaching this jump at an angle, you're already setting your bike up before it leaves into the air. And when I'm back on the ground, I'm on the gas and out of there. Standing at the base of a tabletop or plateau jump right here, and they're starting to show up everywhere, outdoor tracks, not only the Supercross tracks that I ride on, but around the local courses too. It's very important to take this jump correctly, and you can make up a lot of time if you do so. I like to come up on the forward side, hit the jump, make sure I clear the flat part, and land very smoothly on the down side. At this point I apply the gas and accelerate away, and that's where I make up my time. Here's what I was just explaining right here in slow motion so you can see. Now here's how I approach learning to do a tabletop jump. First, I don't hit it as fast, just to get a feel for the jump. And the second time I want to hit it a little harder just to see what it takes to clear the edge of it. And the third time, I might go all the way and make sure I clear it, so I hit it really fast. And once I'm sure I can clear it, then I start working on technique. I want to make sure my bike lands on the same angle as the landing area. And remember, once you've landed off these, don't forget to accelerate away. I'm standing in front of a jump right now that I want to show you because it looks simple, it looks like a simple smooth approach with a basic jump, but the one thing different that I think that needs the special attention here is this jump shoots you very high in the air, and I think there's ways you can land that helps you out, maybe land a little smoother and be able to get on the gas sooner, so I want to show you how I do it. Jumps like these will definitely send you high in the air, so when you're approaching them, remember, be in the crouched position ready for that launch. When it shoots you up in the air like that, I lean back over my bike to keep it level. Then I pull lightly on the bars and get back on the gas, which brings your back end down so your rear wheel will land first, and you get a good acceleration away from the jump. We're at another tricky situation here. From the angle you're at, you're on top of the jump. Immediately following is this valley or ravine that you see Jeff at the very bottom of. If I approach that jump you're on at the speed that I normally do, I would fly clean to the bottom, right where Jeff is, maybe a very hard landing, and then have difficulty with that sharp left-hander rise at the end. What I want to show you how I do here is come up in a good way to brush off speed on the jump where you're at. And then I'll land very short on this and have a smooth approach for that jump and be back on the gas. So let me give you a demonstration right now. Here I do it the wrong way. I land too far off this jump and it causes me to land hard. Then I have difficulty going through the turn afterwards. This way I brush off a little bit of speed. How you brush off speed is when you're approaching the jump, you actually turn your bike just before it leaves the ground. That gets your bike back on the ground, and by getting it back on the ground faster, it definitely helps me set up for the following turn. So remember, turn your bike just before it leaves the ground, brush off your speed, get back on the ground so you get you more time to set up for that next turn. Behind me is a double jump that's becoming very popular in motocross. Sometimes you're not sure if you can make it over that second jump. A few of the ways that I go about it is I might try to hit the jump first, maybe medium speed, see what it takes to land before the second one, maybe halfway between. Then I pick up my speed a little more and I'll try to fly right to the base of that jump. If that I feel confident at that and I feel like I can make it, then I'll go for it. But there's a lot of times I'm not even sure at that point, and another alternative is actually to jump to the side of the jump. Then you can see where you have jumped, and if you feel confident at that point, then proceed to try to double the jump.
Kill that puppy. Brock, we just completed jumps, and at your level of ability, it seems like you're serious. You want to get around the track fast, and you really don't flash around, but we see you flashing when the checker flag's out if you're in first place. But isn't it kind of... It's good to know how to handle your bike in midair and get a little cocky, isn't it? Yeah, it is, Dave. I always make sure, though, on the racing, don't waste your time doing cross-ups out there. Most of our races come down to a couple of seconds at the finish line. If I'm wasting a second here and there, you know, that's not good. Especially even if you have a big lead, you can screw up, blow it, and, you know, I just wouldn't want to do that. So I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I like to do out there, some play-around jumps, some cross-ups, maybe some slow wheelies. But I remember this. What I'm doing this is teaching me all the different stuff I can do on a motorcycle. Maybe someday those things will help in a race condition. You know, learn the balance point of my bike, learn how I can handle the bike in midair, and hey, in Supercross, anything can happen. There's times I need to change the directions in the air on my bike. What I'm doing right here is just having a good time, what I call play riding.
I'm just doing some slow wheelies. I'm using my back brake to keep the bike in a very vertical position. At that point, I'm learning the balance of it. I'm getting to just good time on the bike, playing around, feeling what the bike's all about. You gotta try it. It'll help you in your racing. You'll be surprised.
Brock, we've been on the track all day long. I've been eating your dust and along the side. Don't you get antsy just to go out and terrorize one of these hills, do a little hill climbing?
I sure do, David. Hill climbing's good practice, and it's a lot of fun, too. I think it helps you to keep sharp on your motorcycle, and also you can learn a lot about your balance, too. Negotiating hills like this definitely sharpens your reflexes and makes me watch way in advance for obstacles that might occur. And a lot of people, when they're racing motocross, get in a bad habit of not watching far enough ahead for lines. Coming down the hill, it's the same situation basically, but watch for rain ruts, and if you do have to cross them at about a 45-degree angle if you can. But when I'm out hill climbing, I don't always make it to the top. Well, we all get caught in these positions once in a while. Let me show you a few helpful hints that I've learned from practice and trial and error. First, I'm in a rut right here, and I'll just get off my bike. I usually get off on the left side if possible. This gives you the rear brake, the kickstart, anything you need access to right there. I generally leave it in gear, and at this point right here, I might grab the back end and pull it out of this rut right here, let the front wheel come back down, turn it around, pull the clutch in. At this point, always remember to lean the bike into the hill. You never want it going down that way because you'll never catch your bike as it tumbles down the hill. So at this point, I kind of work my front wheel back and forth, let it slide down the hill, keep the angle into the hill like this, and then at this point, I've got the clutch in. I might jump back on, let the bike roll down the hill, and jump back on, and down the hill we can go.
Hey, man! You should have seen the jump he just took me over. I don't have a helmet on.
Oh well, most time I wouldn't do that to somebody without a helmet, but I'll tell you one thing, I didn't really think you had that many brains to worry about.
Oh yeah?
Right after working with you on this video.
Hey, there was a guy at Dallas that didn't have a helmet on, and you launched your bike into him.
Oh,
It wasn't funny. Luckily, it was okay. Tell us about that Dallas crash. That was outrageous.
oh yeah, the one when I landed the bike in the bleachers like that. That was, yeah, I think Bailey and I hit off a jump, and sure enough, my bike kind of shot me off the back, and the bike hit a berm and launched right up in the bleachers. That guy's eyes were that big. Yeah, here David and I were having another one of our famous battles. I think that year we must have run into each other at least a half a dozen times. But here he goes underneath me, and I see him, so I skid my bike around to repass him back, and I start accelerating for the jump. I don't think David really saw me, because by the time he hits the jump, he hits it at an angle and starts going for the next right-hand turn, and I was already there. Boy, we hit hard. Definite collision course there. Jerks me right off the back of my bike, and when I do, I hit the throttle really hard right about now. Sends it right for the berm, launches it over the hay bales, clears a little valley, and lands right in the spectator's lap. That guy came up to me after the race. He didn't have a scratch on him. I gave him my jersey after the race for a little reminder of what happened that night.
Well, that footage is great, but it's really not the racing footage we're looking for right now. You've shown us exactly how the hot starts, the turns, pass blocking, some jumps, little style maneuvers, and actually, going the fast line, but that's practicing. The race footage and your career, you've got some great races. Even if you didn't get the whole shot, you had to pass. A lot of people can't pass. They do that one-liner. Let's take a look at some of your footage where you actually went on to pass people in just incredible situations.
Yeah, I want to show you some footage that where I actually passed a lot of people from getting a bad start, and other people too. I want to show you some good passes I think that are done by other riders also. And these riders and most of the top professional riders are always thinking of somewhere to pass. Be creative. Come into a turn. If the guy's taking the typical outside line, maybe a berm, try to get underneath him, or show a tire, show a wheel. That makes that guy nervous, and then you can get around him. So I want to show you some footage that I think is good passing. Passing is a very important part of motocross. Unless you get the whole shot every single race and you can't pass, you're not going to win. Here I make a pass where there's virtually no room whatsoever on Jeff. Come into the turn and I just about skim the hay bale, but I'm sliding inside and I basically take the line away from Jeff, and there's not a whole lot he can do. Right here I make sure though, drift back to the outside so Jeff can't come around me, and I make sure the pass sticks. But you can always learn something from being passed too. Here's a classic example of do unto others as they have done unto you. Jeff comes right inside of me, perfect. This was late in the same race. He lands just inside of me and takes away the inside line. Here's another aggressive move Ricky Johnson pulls on David Bailey. Comes inside of him, definitely the classic block pass. Here Keith Bowen, who has a hot line by double jumping a jump, uses it 3 laps in a row to pass one rider. Here he gets by Eric Kehoe. The following lap he does the same identical thing, sets him up for the double jump right here, double jumps around him, passes another rider. In the following lap, there he is again, he passes the third rider. So 3 laps in a row, 3 passes. Here Ricky and Jimmy Hawley again. Ricky's holding the inside line. Even though it seems like Jimmy can squirt back ahead here, Ricky knows he's got the inside line and he holds it. Slides Jimmy right outside, and there's the perfect pass. Again, Ricky does it to Ron Lachine here. Hits the jump hard. Squares him up and just pins it through the whoop-de-doos. There's nothing Ron can do. Again, you can see it in the slow motion here. He knows he's running out of room on the inside. He actually backs off for a split second, crosses wheels, and just leans back and pins it. How's this for a sky shot by Johnny O'Mara? Just misses the hay bale, but it's a gutsy move, but he definitely got around him. Again, you see it in slow motion here where Johnny shoots past, does a double jump. He knows he's going for the hay bale, so he turns his bike sideways and just clips it. He was lucky. But I think that's what the spectators come to watch. One thing when you're racing, make sure you watch far ahead. Here Barnett goes down by leading, takes out a second place rider, and I slide by for third. Probably won me another Super Bowl of motocross. But this move right here might have cost me a Super Bowl of motocross later. Ronnie comes in the turn, slides down, and I'm right behind him and takes me out too. We both go down. Jeff Ward, the eventual winner, goes right by. So when you're out there racing, remember to watch ahead. You never know what's going to be out there. Here, I think at this race, I think that rider ahead of me is number, 007, I think it said. Yep, the old smokescreen trick. But I foiled him and made it through.
Brock at a Supercross, I see this chain link fence and everybody's shoving paper through, sign this, but they're asking a lot of questions. They want to know all sorts of tricks. Can we ask you some questions?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea, Dave. I think we should just go over anything that you can think of, or maybe even Jeff can think of that, some people would want to know. Let's hit it.
Jeff, you first.
Like in the morning of a race, I have trouble eating because I've got I got butterflies. And so do you have any tips on eating stuff?
Yeah, one thing, don't ever change what you normally eat, just for race day or anything like that. But a lot of times myself, it's the same way. After this many years of racing, I still have butterflies too at all the races. So I usually, oatmeal seems to settle well in my stomach, maybe some oatmeal with some bananas, and just go real light. And then another thing I do during the race day, I try to nibble on snacks that are good carbohydrates that might give me good energy, but don't eat anything real heavy that'll stay in your stomach for a long time. I eat just lightly for, a lot. So I think that might help you out if you try that.
The front brake here and the rear brake, when you're in the air sometimes, I've heard a couple of riders saying that if they're a little tweaked off a jump, the gyrating tires moving around, you can kind of recorrect. Obviously you're shifting your weight, you're moving the center of gravity and your body around, but do you ever use the brakes in midair?
That's a pretty observant point. I don't think I've ever even been asked that question. You're the first person. That is a secret that a lot of the top riders do use. you'll see it happen. A lot of times you don't know why, but if their front end drops down, many times you'll see the rider hold the throttle full throttle. You think he's just panicking or something? No, he's doing that for a reason. If you give the gas full throttle when your front end's beginning to drop on a jump, it speeds the rear wheel up. That actually the force of the chain and the wheel spinning that hard will drop the rear wheel, and vice versa. If your front end's too high, if you can actually, this is a hard technique though, and you should practice it before you try using it in a race situation, but if your front end is up in the air, you can actually tap your rear brake, but do it with the clutch end in the air, and it stops your rear wheel, and this will bring your front end back down. I think the throttle technique is more effective though to lower your rear end than the back brake is to lower your front, but it does work, and you should try it and practice it out on your local jumps.
And all important is the throttle when you're landing.
Yeah, that is a really important point, and I show that in some of the video, and it's a good point when you make it. When you land, when you get on the gas smoother, when you accelerate away from the jump, it makes a big difference. You don't load the bike as hard, and you got to get on the gas just before your back tire actually touches the ground.
You know, I'm not very good at like cross-ups and stuff, but when I can do them, I can get them, you know, done, but halfway in the air, I start falling sideways. I mean, do you just let the bike go, or do you have to push back, kind of?
It's funny, you know, a lot of people, a lot of kids are really worried about their cross-ups and stuff like that. And the best way, you know, I can't blame them. They want to look stylish, and they see some of the top riders doing it. You know, of course, always work on your riding technique, your turns, those kind of things too. But, you know, I can't advise you against going out and playing around with the bike. It's very good practice. And I think the best thing to do is to go out and actually just try different things. Remember, when you're going up to do a cross-up, many times, you know, you approach a jump at an angle or whatever you're hitting. You approach at an angle to already get your bike going in the direction you want. And at that point, you might lay the bike over, but always come back down, and you have to correct that bike before you land on the ground. Be careful.
Brock, I know you've already told me, but I think we should tell them you hold on to this machine not only with your hands, you actually hold on with the inside of your legs and your boots, and take a look down there. Is that standard practice?
Yeah, I think so, pretty much so for most of the riders. You wear out the inside of your knee right here on your leathers and your boot, and you wear the paint off on your frame and stuff like that. What you do, you're gripping the bike at all times. In the air, you see people sometimes doing one, no handers. That's what they're doing. They're gripping the bike. And even in the turns, in some of this video here, you can see actually in the jump, I'm actually turning the bike. This is done actually a little bit of pressure on one of the inside of your knee. Turn the bike over a little bit. This helps you to make a correction in the air.
Are you ever gassing the bike and braking the bike at the same time?
Well, I guess there are times you actually are when you're coming into a turn, and you have to watch very closely to see some of this stuff, but your clutch is in, you're on the brake. Many times you'll see me with working my throttle and using my fingers on the brake, or even the rear sometimes too. You might be skidding into the turn, and you know your speed's going to come down, so I start automatically applying the power and just a little bit of clutch. That's actually loading the clutch a little bit, but it's not fully out. But I'm loading the bike, and as soon as I quit having to slow down, I release the brakes, and the power and the RPM of the engine is already up, and then I'm letting the clutch back out, just like the technique we've discussed with the sliding the clutch out. And just those little things make a big difference at the finish line.
Out in Southern California, we don't have much mud and stuff, but when we go back east to the big nationals and stuff, you know, I mean, I'm not very good in mud because I haven't had much experience in it. What do you...
Well, that's something that I really suffered from for probably the first 5 or 6 years of my racing career too. But one thing that really helps in the mud is to stay loose on the bike. You always want to make sure you're very loose and to flow with the bike. Remember that if you fight the bike, you know, you have a lot of problems at that point. You tighten up, you get tired much sooner because the bike's beginning to weigh more, it's getting heavy, and then, you know, if you fight that big old 300-pound motorcycle, by the time it gets all that mud on it, they weigh 300 pounds sometimes. So just remember to try to stay very loose, and there are certain things I'll cover that work out in the mud that, you know, you don't do anywhere else. But if it rains, take advantage of it, especially in Southern California where you don't have much chance to do that.
Your average recreational rider, they really would concentrate on using their rear brake more than anything else. Their front brake scares them a little bit. But in racing, you really have to use that front brake. It's so important. Both, actually, right?
Yeah, the front brake is your most important brake. And when I was first working with Jeff and he was starting to work, he really didn't use his front brake either. And he was just beginning riding at that point. And right when I taught him, you know, I told him to use that front brake a little more. And it felt awkward at first. But as soon as he learned how, he advanced very quickly. And a lot of riders you see will either use the one finger or the two fingers. And I've even seen them just use a middle finger. Or some people prefer all of them. Myself, I use two if it's necessary for, you know, a little more more effort on the brake, but one finger sometimes is substantial. So it depends on what you want to do. I prefer to set my brake up to where I can squeeze it in, but yet I can still control the throttle without these knuckles, these other two knuckles, without them being hindrance at all. And I do use my front brake probably more than I use my rear brake, really, because it does have most of your stopping power. So when I'm coming into a turn, David, I'm usually trying to make sure the bike's in a semi-straight position. You don't want to have the wheel turn, or you don't want to have a really radical angle on the bike unless there's good traction. But I apply the front brake, and you need to practice this. You need to work with different things and find out how much front brake you can use without the front end turning or twisting or without falling down. Don't worry about if you fall down once or twice. Maybe a little helpful hints to loosen up your levers a little bit in case you do fall down. They won't bend up real bad. They might just pop up when you're first learning these techniques. But your front brake, like I said, is very, very important, and you should try to apply as most of it you can, and you'll get to feel it from it just by working with your front brake.
After practice, sometimes the track gets quite a bit rougher, you know. Does that happen? I mean, what do you do for that? Do you got to walk the track or something before you go to race?
Yeah, that happens a lot to us, especially in the Supercross, as I say, because, you know, if I ride a heat race, one of the first ones of the night, those tracks are artificial, and usually they tear down pretty bad. So that what happens is, you know, I race early in the night, and the main event might come almost the last thing at night, 4 or 5 hours later, you know. So I always try to walk the track if they let me, and especially in the outdoors it's necessary too, because when I practice, usually by the time I race, you know, there's quite a bit of qualifying races, and you can get hurt really bad if you're not paying attention where a smooth section was before, and you hit that big bump that what you never even saw before. So if you can, walk the track, look for those big bumps, braking bumps, acceleration bumps, and you should be able to, after a long time on, you know, racing circuit, you should be able to tell, you know, when a track, if it's a loose track, you know it's going to get quite a bit rougher before you ride it. So have a little caution on the first few laps.
Brock, one of the quickest and simplest ways to set your bike up for the track that anybody can have is an extra counter sprocket, changing the gears.
Yeah, it's really important, Dave. What I end up doing on my bike, I usually set it up, well, if Supercrosses, I have to have a little lower gearing because I need a little shorter, real quick acceleration times. So I end up running, you know, I'd say 1 or 2 teeth lower in the Supercross than I do outdoors. But my most critical thing that I like to set my bike up for is actually the start. I like to set mine up to where I get a good start. And once I get a good start, then I worry about, you know, if I might be 1 tooth off somewhere out in the track, I'll suffer with that. And another thing you got to always remember to do when you're setting your bike up and you're playing with gearing, when you're out practicing or you're out in practice the morning of the race, there's a lot of times the track isn't quite as fast, or you're not going quite as fast as you are when you race. So a big mistake a lot of the top riders, or mini riders make, and some of the top riders I should say, actually do set their bike up a little low, and then when they get in race conditions, they have to pick up the race, pick up the speed to go that fast, and their gearing's a little too low. So don't make that mistake if you can help it.
Okay, some nights before the races, I try to go to bed early and stuff, but I just can't get to sleep. I mean, it's kind of hard because you're so nervous and ready to race.
That's a good point, Jeff, because you know what? I heard it, and read a study that it didn't really make the difference the night before as it did the one before that. So if your race is on Sunday, that Friday night's a very, very important night to get your normal sleep, maybe in a little more. Some people take 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Get all that sleep on a Friday night. Don't try and think that you can just go to bed on Saturday night, the night before the race, and get an extra 2 or 3 hours of sleep, because a lot of times when you're lying in bed, you're thinking about that race, you're a little nervous, you have a hard time sleeping. It happens to me all the time. So just remember, get a lot of rest a couple days before too. Okay, let's go back and review what we've learned so far. I'll cover all the important steps one by one. Starts. They're always overlooked. Everybody thinks, I know how to start, I don't need to practice these. That's wrong. It's very important to practice starts. You got to remember to have your body in the right position, up on the gas tank, weight forward, and have someone help you practice with a reaction of a stick or a hand movement or anything to simulate a gait movement. Just remember too, when you're on the starting line of a race, if you have to pick a rut, make sure you pick a good straight one. That helps you hold your bike straight when you leave. When you gas it away, try to lean forward, keep your head over the front of the handlebars. You want to make sure your front wheel doesn't come too high off the ground. This is a good example from watching Jeff here. Remember, you've got to practice these starts, so when you get on the starting line, no matter what kind of confusion happens all around you, you'll be able to get the best start possible. If you're unfortunate enough to get a bad start, remember, don't panic. It's not necessary to go diving up into the back of another rider. Right here I'm looking for an opening. I'm on the inside again, in the back. And just wait for something to clear out. You want to make sure you avoid all the crashes in the first turn. And as soon as you see something open, go for it. Turns, remember, you always want to slide up, get up on the gas tank as far as possible. Keep your weight up forward, keep your arms bent, keep your head about positioned over the crossbar of the bike. Legs straight out in front of you, keep your shoulders parallel with the handlebars, and then accelerate away. Whoop-de-doos, you want to make sure you get lined up straight before you enter them. See, I pivot my bike straight there, I hit the first one just like a jump and launch myself deep into the whoops. Keep back over the bike, a little bit of throttle, don't try to always be gunning it, it's very difficult to pick up speed going through whoop-de-doos. But try to skim across the top of them best you can. This one's a tough one, it's going to take a little bit of practice, but you can do it. Tabletop jumps, remember when you approach them, you want your front end to actually start dipping back down so you land nice and smooth on the landing surface, and then don't forget to accelerate away. Jumps like this that shoot you very high, remember when you approach them, stand up, get in the crouch position, and as your bike goes up into the air, throw your weight back. This will help your bike start flying level. And now as you come down to the ground, throw your weight up forward, apply the gas, and you're back on the ground, accelerating away. Jumps where you come up and you've got to brush off speed. You come up to them, and just before your bike starts to leave the ground on the tip of the jump, you turn it sideways. As you can see, my bike sliding sideways there, and I'm back on the ground. Gives me plenty of time to come up. Even though this has a jump before the turn, I'm all set up, back on the ground, and into the berm. Double jumps, remember, you can always jump off to the side or jump to the base of them. But remember, if you've got enough speed and you feel confident, you gotta go for it. Not every track has double jumps and whoop-de-doos, but one thing they do have in common is passing. You've got to be creative. Here I slide by underneath Jeff, like I said earlier, with barely a couple inches of spare between myself and the hay bale. A pass like this can definitely win you a race, can win you a championship too. But when you do make a move like this, you got to make sure it sticks, so when you exit the turn, take the line away from the other rider too. Hill climbing. I like to do that because I think it's just all around good time, but it also sharpens your reflexes. So when you're out riding, not every time do you have to be riding around a course and busting your tail for 30-minute, 40-minute motos. Just go out and have some fun with some friends, challenge them, see who can make it up the hill the farthest. You'd be surprised what you can accomplish this way.
Brock, buddy, I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me be a part of this video. After 10 years of just outrageous racing, you deserve a video more than anybody, I think. And this kid here, what a clone, man. You look just like him, and you're racing just about like him. Jeffrey, good riding.
Thanks.
For you, Brock, I got to ask one question, though. You blew away Europeans in Europe. You've won 6 national championships, and the big one, which I thought was the All-American victory, it was like Rocky. You winning the USGP at Carlsbad, the 500 class, man. What else is there? You getting kind of bored with this sport?
No, I don't really get bored with it right now. There's always new challenges out there, and I really enjoy the sport, and I enjoy the traveling and the people I meet. I go all over the world, so anyone that ever want to pursue a career like this, more power to them, because I really enjoyed myself and I've learned a lot. So, maybe with this video we made right here, maybe they'll be able to learn a lot too, and maybe have a career like myself. So best of luck everybody out there, and hope you enjoyed watching this video. Maybe you've learned something, and I hope you go out and smoke your friends too. Hi, this is Brock Glover of Team Yamaha, and after 10 years of being on the circuit and winning 6 national championships, I finally come up with enough information, I think, to make an instructional video. So I've got an instructional video coming out covering jumps, bumps, starts, turns, everything you can think of in that, and it's going to be available. I don't know why I'm thinking.
Rolling.
Today I brought my friend along, Jeff Grafton. Jeff's a neighbor friend of mine.
Okay, Mr. Rogers.
Ready?
What I'm doing here right now is just playing around, having a good time doing a little wheelies. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to go very, very slow. The slower I can go, the better I like to do it. So I back it on the rear wheel, back it on the back. As most everybody races knows, the start's one of the most critical things in all of a motocross race. It's probably the most commonly overlooked too when you go out and do practice, go out to do. Okay, ready?